again, this is a company that's 18 years old. How large is the advertising market frequently? We're counting on, if you're an investor, you're counting on Reddit saying, look, we've just been terrible. We haven't tried to monetize for years and years. But now that we're trying, our value is very high, and we ought to be employing this many people relative to our revenue because the opportunity is so huge. And it's like, is the opportunity that huge? It's been 18 years. Is it that huge? And given that, do you have a cost structure that's appropriate for your revenue potential? I think that Reddit would be in much better shape had they done a much larger round of, like, you had kind of had permission as a tech company to do layoffs last year, right? Again, this isn't fun to say. I know people are impacted. These are people's lives. It's a tough job market right now because there's been so many layoffs. I think it's particularly tough sort of the older you are, like, and so I don't want to minimize that at all. I just have to be, this is my analyst hat on. From a business analyst perspective, I look at their financials, and this feels like a bloated company relative to their revenue and their revenue potential. And that would be sort of a concern for me going forward.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, the public markets kind of create a new challenge for them because Reddit, they are the beloved tadpole shrimp. They have a really stable base of dedicated users. And I know the S1 talked about growth over the past year or two, but it's hard to imagine the audience scaling that much further than it already has. And if it's not crazy profitable with the base it already has now, it's not clear how they meaningfully change that story without some sort of fundamental shift in the model and how they plan to make money going forward, which of course leads us to the AI possibilities.
The AI possibilities we definitely have to get to, but I will note Reddit's users numbers have really grown in the last year. Now, I'm not clear how much to tease apart that from, like, is there some aspect of the API crackdown and like all those users that were using third-party apps, are those being counted differently now? That's not super clear. Their logged out users have grown more than their logged in users. What is that a function of? But it is worth noting their user base has grown. They talk about things like we have international opportunities. Like Reddit is predominantly English. There are other language subreddits on there, but you could see that. But again, this is where the 18 years bit hurts you. It's right. If you haven't gone international after 18 years, right, or in a really meaningful moving the business sort of way, is that sort of going to happen? And like, that's sort of the question in the back of your mind. Right. Yeah. It's like, oh, wait, look, we grant the fact no one knew what they were doing or even tried to really monetize for like 15 years. But still, this is where, like, going international isn't really about monetization. It's like how there are other message boards in other countries and other sort of places that people communicate. So, Reddit, so again, that those questions tend to loom large, but it is worth acknowledging they have had very strong user growth over the last year, and that is a reason to be optimistic.
Well, yeah, that's why I mentioned it. The numbers over the last year are impressive. At the same time, I'm also a little bit skeptical. Like a year before you go public, the numbers start to spike. Who the hell knows exactly what's going on and how it's being measured? But in any event, the other question is, can AI provide an additional revenue stream that does provide some of the upside that the public markets are going to be looking to see?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
they struck a deal with Google for $60 million this year. It looks like that deal goes for another couple years as well. And Google, they're licensing the Reddit data to Google as Google develops LLMs. And what do you think of the possibilities in that particular market?
Well, I think the possibilities are very intriguing. So number one, we don't know if this deal is exclusive or not. I'm assuming it is exclusive because it feels like they would be trumpeting the fact that it's not exclusive if it were not, because they could be,
I was Googling around for details and I couldn't find anything.
Right. So that would be sort of my assumption, absent sort of other evidence, but we don't know for sure. But that $60 million is basically pure profit. Right. All it is just taking, opening up an API to Google and they can sort of ingest it directly. Why is that valuable to Google? Well, this gets to the topics we've been talking about. Like if you're an entity providing one answer, well, you need to get like good supply, and the supply quality on a relative basis is going to get worse as we're increasingly overrun with AI content. And as, more and more sites
from the rest of the
right.
internet.
And valid sites want to perhaps block their stuff from Google. Now, to be clear, Reddit is also important to Google search, like Google's sort of core engine. Like people famously will append Reddit to searches because they're trying to find sort of the right thread to sort of look for, which kind of makes a decision for Reddit. Like if LLMs become huge, which is where the data is valuable, and search is diminished, does that actually hurt them because they're trying to get these sort of logged out users? There's lots of interesting, long-term questions here, but I don't think Reddit's very worried about the long term. This is sort of another broader bit, which is there's been people with money in Reddit for a long time that would really like to get it out. And that concerningly includes a lot of employees who are selling like 2/3 of this issuing, or like 1/3, of this issuing is coming from like employee shares and stuff like that, which is kind of abnormal. Usually employees have to be locked up for 6 months before they can sell. There is an aspect of this. You can see a long-term vision. You can see the increased value of one of the last quote unquote open user-generated content sites and how useful that is to things like LLMs. Like you need to, like, yes, everyone already scraped Reddit once, but you need fresh data. You need fresh insights, fresh sort of things that are coming along. And that makes Reddit potentially more valuable. But at the same time, it's questions about the long-term health of the business. Your bit about a very weird increase in users just the last few months and everyone involved trying to sell their stock on day one. Like there's definitely like things. And then there's the broader, just sort of like, to go back to the tadpole shrimp, what happens when the whole idea of this is people put in user-generated content because there are topics they're interested in, and now Reddit is quite explicitly selling it, right? And by the way, I'm glad everyone raised a sort of misinformation stink about selling data when it was really about selling, making tools for advertisers to sort of serve ads to people. Now we have companies quite explicitly selling data. That's exactly what's happening. And all this sort of, people being upset is sort of exhausted in this regard. But so that's a change. That's like, it's sort of very explicit. When you go on Reddit and you type something, that's helping Reddit make money because it's selling it to Google. Now, it always helped them make money because they made the site compelling that they could sell ads. There's a bit where, though, that separation of the monetization from the user activity kind of made it feel not so sort of icky in a way.
Transactional.
This goes to
Google's just writing a $60 million check for everyone's data.
I really don't like this giving moderators and people with high karma an opportunity to buy stock pre-IPO. Like, what's the actual opportunity here? Why do they want to buy it pre-IPO versus post-IPO? Well, because theoretically, if there's a pop in the stock, then you can profit. And by the way, it's another lockup. So you're basically giving people an opportunity to sell your stock super quick and just pocket the proceeds. And sure, it's nice they get it instead of like institutional buyers or whoever sort of benefits from these IPO pops. Like in isolation, this is great. Sure, if we're going to reward someone, let's not reward bankers and their clients. Let's reward our hardworking sort of folks. The problem is, I worry about the this ickiness in the ecosystem. People modded for free, which you can look at it in sort of like a narrow, like put my labor cap sort of lens on and say unpaid labor, this is sort of bad. But they were obviously being compensated. Now, how are they being compensated?
Social capital,
having power. Just it was something to do. Like there's some sort of ineffable quality of the tadpole shrimp era, of that bit about the internet. And I think the thing that sort of, and maybe this is sort of a dumb thing to be worried about, but it does feel like you go to things like people breaking the social contract on Reddit and going to troll other folks. Reddit responding by blocking lots of stuff and probably going too far and feeling ideological about it. You have this aspect of paying off mods. Oh, thanks for all your work. We'll let you benefit from a pop in the stock price. You have we're selling data actually quite explicitly.
Their way through their guilt with this move.
It does a little bit. And like, oh, and by the way, we're all selling our stock on day one, like including the CEO. There's just a lot of bits about this that it makes me, again, as someone that's not a Redditor, but sort of likes the idea of Reddit, it just makes me feel uncomfortable and a little bit like the end of an era. But maybe these are dumb concerns. But that's sort of like, that's a sense of unease that I sort of was trying to articulate in the daily update this week. And here,